how optimistic are you about the fact that we'll be better off next year? But also, if you can give me one reason to be optimistic, please, can you share it with us? Cheer us up. 0344 499 1000. Craig in Durham says that I was fantastic on the talk last night. And Rishi Sunak can say all these optimistic things. He doesn't need to worry about money because he's being a multimillionaire, which I guess is the point. But on the other hand, wouldn't you have faith that somebody who has made it and has significant wealth behind them might actually want to protect their wealth and maybe even continue to grow it? And very often people who have had money and had power and influence seem to be able to, I don't know, provide good guidance and leadership. Not in this case, it would seem. Reasons to be optimistic. There must be one from you. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, somebody who likes to be optimistic at all times is Dr. Roger Givol. He's CEO of Fair Money and he joins me now. Dr. Roger, good morning.
Good morning, James.
Hooray! We're beating inflation.
No, we're not.
Oh. Well, no, I thought you were going to be all optimistic because the Prime Minister, he insists his economic plan is working and he's really optimistic that we'll feel better off next year.
No and yes. No, his economic plan, if there even is one, is not working. And yes, we will feel better off next year because he and all of his Muppets will be gone. The only problem is that the people, they're already labor on steroids. The problem is that the people who replace them might even be worse.
Right. I see. So what we've got is we've got a government that is not necessarily in control and then a situation which is even worse, possibly in the alternative.
That's what it's looking like, yes.
Oh, dear. Well, that's... I asked for those who are listening to call in with one reason why they have a reason to be optimistic. I mean, I think my only reason is that I had a look at the weather forecast and it looks like it might be quite nice this weekend. That's my reason to be optimistic. Is that decent enough?
The reason to be optimistic is that we won't have to watch him roll up his sleeves and do, 4 photo ops every hour telling us how wonderful it is while the roof is falling in around him.
Oh. So why aren't we beating inflation then?
Because real inflation, what they call core inflation, hasn't changed. It's 6.9%. And after 14 interest rate rises, it hasn't moved downwards. CPI, Consumer Price Index inflation, which also includes food and other things, has dropped. Yes, but this is cost push inflation. This is non-consumer spending.
Why do they seem not to understand the difference between cost-push inflation and demand?
They understand perfectly, but they are locked into a rut which they can't get out of, including Mr. Bailey at the Bank of England. How could they turn around and say, okay, we're not going to raise interest rates anymore. In fact, we might even lower them a bit. And then explain why they've hit us with 14 of them already and wrecked the economy, destroyed millions of Britain's lives, ruined the mortgage, the property, and the rental market, and much of British industry and competitiveness, all totally unnecessarily. How could they explain that away?
Well, exactly.
But they just have to keep going.
Yeah, but then... Look, the tourist tax is pushing trade to Paris, say, London's small firms. And this is that, we have tourist tax and then also we don't have VAT incentives. There are a whole range of, issues that the government could provide action on, even if their hands are tied and even if they are stuck in a rut. And yet they're not doing any of them.
And Labour's not to be outdone, James, because Sadiq Khan has to jump in and push ULEZ on us and give us a whole whopping £2,000 each to buy a new van or car.
Oh. So, people like Nigel Farage, they're still fighting on. It looks pretty clear, though, the next few days it'll all over the place. And as you say, £2,000 to help you buy a new car or van. I mean, to my mind, it just strikes me as the most ridiculous spending of money, that ULEZ is both an unnecessary tax and a waste of resource. It's a further opportunity to provide even more surveillance on our society. It's not going to clean up the air. in any shape or form, and it provides an opportunity to spend money on scrapping stuff. And if anybody cared about the environment, then you're throwing away something which used an enormous amount of carbon to make it. Wouldn't it be better to use it until it's economically redundant rather than making new ones? No aspect of this policy makes any sense, combined with the fact that you've got 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on roads which are big enough to cope with faster, and we're saving no energy. We're wasting time and resource. You couldn't make it up. I've just had a rant.
It's good. It's good government at work.
It's not. It's a bunch of cretins governing us, and it doesn't matter which political party they seem to be in. They seem to be as stupid as each other.
I think they've all gotten together and decided that we are the stupidest generation of voters stroke consumers that has ever existed, so they can get away with anything and gaslight us about it.
No, it's worse than that. It's not that we are stupid, it's that they are the stupidest or the thickest or the least intelligent that we've ever had. Because for whatever reason, we seem not to be attracting people who actually have experience, knowledge and expertise into politics, which attracting people into politics who, frankly, don't deserve to be there. And then we're parachuting people into our upper house, people who have absolutely no justification for being there whatsoever. It's an absolute, I was going to use an S word there, something show.
A shambles.
A shambles show. That's what it is, Roger. It's a shambles show.
It's your favorite expression, as you like to say. It's a word that rhymes with lollocks.
Okay. Why do we have to suffer while so many countries have it easy?
Well, here's another thing that successive governments have just failed to action or do anything about for decades. In the United States and many, many other countries, mortgages are fixed rate, as you know. So when you buy a house and you take out a mortgage, that mortgage is for 30 odd years or so, and the rate on it is fixed because the bank is happy to lock in its funding against long-term lending and lock in a steady profit for its shareholders every year for 30 years. But no, here, the banks are allowed to be so greedy that if rates go up, they want some of that too at our expense. So we have this horrific situation where every 2, 3, or 5 years, fixed rate mortgages come to an end and there's a free-for-all again. And especially if rates have moved up, the banks take more from us and it's mayhem and people lose their homes. There's no reason, no earthly reason this should happen. And as I've said, if you are a bit bored on a lazy summer afternoon, make yourself a Pimm's or a cup of tea, write to your MP and say, hey, why don't you really do something about this? Why don't we have fixed rate mortgages like everywhere in the world, almost, so that when people buy a house, they don't have to worry about this anymore.
But there are a whole range of things that the government could do to fix the real estate market, and yet they choose not to. The tax system is wrong. The mortgage market isn't set up in a way, as you correctly point out, to provide the products that we either need or want. And then the tax incentives for either saving or investment aren't there either. The government see it as an opportunity just to take more money off us at every turn.
Yeah.
And then we've allowed ourselves, this whole idea of stamp duty, which is an attack on capital, on your primary residence. I can understand having stamp duty on a second home or on multiple investments. All of that makes perfect sense. But to tax a primary residence, your home, in the way that we've allowed it to be taxed, is both inflationary to the market and disgraceful.
Just remember that we're quite lucky here in that in America, you pay, there is no PPR, there is no principal private residence exemption. You pay 24 to 28% tax on the gain when you sell your house, even if you only have one home. So we're quite lucky that we don't have it here. It swings and roundabouts. But I was going to say that the other advantage to the way most of the world operates is that if you, I know you announced some time ago you had done a great fixed rate mortgage deal when you rolled over your mortgage. Now, if you had rolled that over into a new 30-year mortgage and then you decided to sell your home, if you had a great mortgage deal, your buyer would be able to take over that mortgage, and that would raise the price of your house.
It would indeed. Dr. Roger, thank you very much indeed. We're out of time. That's Dr. Roger Givolb, CEO of Fair Money, bringing us up to date on all the finance. Meanwhile, next, it's the